Welcome to Mimir, the podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs who want to launch and grow a successful business from day one. I'm your host, Maddie Kelly, and each week I sit down with founders who have been there, done that. We dive into the mindset, strategies, and practical tools you need to turn your vision into a reality. So let's get to work. Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. I think collectively we can all agree that startups get glamorized. Social media makes founder life look effortless. Making your own hours, working from the beach, making enough money to do both of those things. It sounds and looks amazing. But most of what it takes to actually get to that point is not sexy. It's hard conversations, long hours, scary choices, and a whole lot of rolling up your sleeves to do the work that no one else is willing to do. In this episode, I sit down with Wade Lowe, a seasoned operator, founder, and fractional executive, to talk about the early stage decisions that make or break a business. One of the biggest questions we tackle is what the heck is a fractional exec and when should you actually bring one in? From landing your first enterprise customer to hiring your first leadership team, we unpack what founders tend to overlook when chasing growth and how to avoid the most common and expensive missteps. Wade's got receipts from building and scaling early stage businesses across industries, and he's refreshingly honest about what you need to build to have a high-performing team in a culture that prioritizes growth, trust, and one people are excited to be a part of. In our conversation, we also cover why being respected is your most valuable KPI over being liked, what culture is not, snacks, unlimited PTO, and the mindset shift every founder needs to grow with their company. If you're scaling and want to protect what makes your startup special, this episode is for you. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Wade to the podcast. I would love for you just to start with sort of a brief introduction into your background and how that led you to what you're doing today.
So I'm going to date myself, but I started my career in 1998, and it's always been related to go-to-market. And whether that was as an individual contributor, straight out of college, as an account manager for a packaging company where I had responsibility for 5 states, to moving out to California, where I spent most of my career, and I was moved out there for that company. And then moved into the managerial roles, and then leadership roles, and then C-suite roles, and then ultimately founding my own. Like, I got a little bit of a late start as it relates to being a founder. Started kind of mid to late 30s. Got the entrepreneurial bug, but I think that was beneficial in a lot of ways. As a little bit more established, which was helpful, especially if you're bootstrapped. Yeah. Secondarily, I had the opportunity and kind of privilege of working for some very good companies that were very well run with some very good leaders. So I got an opportunity to like understand what good looks like, which was helpful. And then even as it relates to founding companies, my background is on the go-to-market side. I always partner with somebody who's on the technical side. Because it's just not my area of expertise. It's not what I'm good at, but I'm pretty good at the growth motion, and so that's where I've spent most of my time.
Yeah, something interesting that you said is, that you got a late start, but I think that it's kind of a misconception that you have to be younger to be an entrepreneur. I think having experience is so helpful. And to have more confidence in yourself and your career is also really helpful. I think you probably skip some of the harder steps that it takes to be an entrepreneur. Like, I think so many of us are kind of faking it till we make it a little bit. Whereas if you come at it, after having in the middle of a great career, it just feels like a little bit of the weight is off your shoulders.
I would completely agree with you in that regard for half of the equation. From operating a business perspective, having a better network, being more confident in yourself, having some past accomplishments that you can pull from, totally agree. Yeah. I think where it's can be, not always, but a little more challenging is if you've got a lot of obligations, then there's a trade-off there, right? Like, and I did. I'm married. I got kids. So when I started the entrepreneurial journey, I had some pretty substantial which I'm not saying that I didn't want to have the obligations, but there's that side of it as well. Whereas when you're younger, you don't have that. Your overhead's super low. You can really, if it doesn't work, the impact's really on you. It's not necessarily on a bunch of people around you. So I think there's a trade-off. If you start really early, you've got a lot of flexibility in regarding to having it not work. It may not impact you but yeah, it feels bad. It's a setback and all that, but you're not damaging your kid's future, right? So, but you also don't know anything. Like, no offense, but you're fairly young too. You just don't know what you don't know. And so it's a trade-off. So you can wait longer for sure, and you have a lot more business acumen. However, if you've got but you may also have more obligations at that time too, which puts a different level of stress on like making it work.
That's literally why I started this podcast, is because I said that all the time. I was like, I don't know what I don't know. And you don't even know what questions to ask to help you know. There is no knowing in entrepreneurship until you've done it. And, for me, having experience in go-to-market is so incredibly helpful. Like, even just to see it from a marketing perspective and to understand what it takes to actually take a company to go to market, it's a lot. So much more than you think it's going to be. And I know like why I really enjoy this phase of the sort of entrepreneurship journey or the startup journey. But for you, I'm so curious to know if like you could articulate sort of why you're obsessed with the go-to-market phase.
So a couple reasons. It's just what I knew. And I think people will naturally default to where they're comfortable. And that happens a lot too, even when you're hiring people. Like, they may be good at two different things, but I always tell people, like, whatever they're more comfortable with, that's where you're going to get the most out of them, because that's where they're most comfortable, and people will default to where they're most comfortable. And it also seemed to be the need, because if I can't do the other things as well as somebody else, I don't want to try to figure it out. I was too old. I was in my mid-30s. I wasn't all of a sudden going to try to figure out how to be an engineer. Right. Was I going to try to figure out how to be a rock star product person? Now, I'm minimally competent in all that stuff just from being around it a lot, especially like on the product side, because I've spent so much time between the end user and the development team, and end user and the product team. Through osmosis, you pick that stuff up. But I defaulted to what I knew, and I would say what I was good at. Like, I think I'm above average at taking products to market. Even products, and looking back, like I started my career at a plastic packaging company, and it's a great company, very well run. And but we made bottles and caps because companies don't make that themselves; they have to buy it from somewhere. So,
interesting.
Like, that's what I cut my teeth on. And you try to like figure out how to differentiate your cap versus somebody else's cap. Like, there's not a lot of difference there, but you got to navigate through it, and you still have a quota, and you still have to obtain your numbers, and you still need to succeed, and you still got to sell. And so I was kind of, at the time I was like, man, what am I doing? But what I'd learned through that process was, well, if I can do this, if I can take this to market, then I can probably take just about anything to market. What I found is that I have a pretty good ability about being able to map people's problems to a solution that we provide. And if we can't provide the solution, then I pull the ripcord and abort, because I'm not in the business to try to sell somebody on something they don't need.
Right. This is a critical, important moment in this phase. And I see what this is like. And it seems obvious, right? Like you have a business idea. You're like, I know that there's a gap here.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody's looking for this product. We are pretty confident that people are going to want to buy it. But when you actually like take things to market, it's not as simple as that. You have to do so much work behind the scenes to do exactly what you said, which is map, pain points to value drivers and solutions. And I would love for you to take sort of the audience through the high level of what that process looks like and sort of diving into why most people don't get this right and why it's so hard to actually do correctly.
Yeah. So first, I think is the market's just really loud and noisy, more so than it's ever been. So even if you've got a great product, if you can't cut through the noise and differentiate yourself, even just from getting people to be able to engage with you, then it doesn't matter how good the product is. It just doesn't. And then I think there's different components. Are you a D2C company and it's purely e-com, which is not where I grew up, but that's very different than B2B enterprise, which is where I spent most of my career.
Yep.
So I'll speak specifically around the B2B and the enterprise, especially taking something from nothing to something, from zero customers to some customers. Is the first thing you've really got to be able to do is, at the end of the day, early on, companies are betting on the founder. Period. Full stop. End of story. They believe that you're going to be able to do something different than what they have experienced or what they are currently doing now. And if they don't believe that, you have no business. You just won't. Right? You just can't get people to pay attention, because most of the time the product isn't actually better initially than what's out there, but what they're betting is that you're going to get there. And so they're betting on the founder. So you've got to have a good message around that. You've got to have a good story around that. It's helpful to have some credibility around, hey, this is what we've built in the past in my career. This is why we think we're going to be able to get there. Hey, this is the problem that you guys are declaring you're having. This is how we're going to solve it. And yeah, it'll take us some time, but they're basically investing in you. And you have to have a champion inside that business who's willing to put their job on the line to say, this is the direction we're going to go. And it typically does not come from the bottom up. It's got to come from senior level down, because otherwise they don't have the influence. Now, if you have a fully baked product, maybe it's not traditional enterprise SaaS. Maybe it's like a Slack, where they got picked up, obviously, by Salesforce eventually into the enterprise. But they could start from the ground level because there was very little friction. It was very easy to adopt. People could use it and then talk about how much they like it, and kind of spread that way. But that's not normally how that goes. Normally in the enterprise, there's a ton of stakeholders. There's a lot of complexity. They already have existing solutions that they're already using. And no matter how badly they declare that they hate them and they don't want to use them, they're still in there. And they're by default going to stay there until something else comes along that's better, or their contract ends, or whatever the case may be. So what I found is you've really got to find early on a couple key anchor enterprise customers where you can develop a champion. And then when you get them to be able to actually use the product, you can then take that out to the other customers and say, hey, this is what we're doing for company X. And they'll listen. But until you get that, it's hard to get people to listen. So you've got to get that use case, and then you can start to promote the use case, and then it makes it a lot easier. The snowball starts to roll downhill.
What are some of the tactics to get that first company? Like, is it just simply harassing them through sales tactics until they relent, or is it connections? Like, I think that's probably the next immediate question that everyone's going to ask.
Yeah. So if you come from a specific industry, a lot of times it will be you're going to build something for that industry because you understood the problem, and maybe you have some existing relationships, or maybe your company that you work for is your first customer. That's if you come from the space. Imagine if you spent 10 years in a space, you're going to have some relationships. You can probably leverage those.
Yeah.
If you're building something you didn't come from the space, which has been my career, I've been in a bunch of different industries, you better find some, like, work really hard to figure out who the guy or woman is that's got the influence, and then you got to find a way to get in front of them, and you got to get them to buy into you. I remember very specifically in the last venture that we had, there was one person in particular who was hugely influential in the company, and sorry, in the industry. And we hired a woman who used to work for him, and she was 7 levels removed from him. I was like, but I really would like to talk to him. Really need to try to get in touch and try to get connected there. She somehow got to me his cell phone number, and I reached out to him a couple times. No, didn't hear back. One time I called, and he was at lunch. He was at lunch, and he picked up. And I said, "Look, this is who I am. I know who you are. I know your reputation. This is what we're doing." I said, "Just give me like 30 seconds. I know throughout your career," because I knew his history. He'd built something similar in the past. I was like, "I know your history. I know what you built. I know you're ambitious. I know you like to take big bets. I just want to meet and talk to tell you what we're doing and get your thoughts and see if there's anything that we can do to possibly, just get to know each other and see if there's ways we can help you. You can help us." He's like, "That's probably the first time anybody's ever said that to me, so let's schedule a meeting." And the first meeting didn't go great. Like, it just didn't. Right? But got to understand us, got to know him. He had some feedback. That was a all-in 3-year process. And not until he was actually working, but until it really started to turn into something where he was fully engaged and then also helping us in the market. I mean, that was a long slog, but that one phone call changed the trajectory of my career. And I was not 25 years old, BDR, making outbound. I mean, I'm trying to, I gotta figure out how to get to the right people. And there's a bit of desperation that comes with that. And if you're too worried about what people think, or whether they're going to care, or whether they're going to respond, or whether they're going to man, good luck. Like, you just have to be willing to do it. Right. And a lot of entrepreneurship gets very glamorized, and that's not glamorous.
No, there's like a hustle that you have to do where you really have to step off your high horse and recognize that you have to hustle and put in the work. And I think I love that about startups, and that especially at the early stages, you're wearing 7 different hats. And as the OG employees of a startup, you are also wearing 7 million different hats. And I remember when I interviewed at the company that I currently work for, it was very much like, are you okay getting your hands dirty? Like, do you believe that grunt work is for everyone? Like, these are the kinds of important culture differentiators than, somebody else. And I think this is also important to note, is that hiring at the C-suite level at a startup, this is another question. Like, I think sometimes you hire a CFO and they don't want to do the grunt work because they haven't done that in literally years.
Correct.
And then when they come in and work for a startup, it's like, oh shit, I have to go back to plugging in stuff for our own books. And it's like, yeah, that's just part of the game.
Yep. Yeah, it's not even just part of it. It is the game. So I strongly recommend the startups that I engage with, just because I talk to a lot of founders and a great founder network called Hampton as well. It's so surrounded by a lot of really, really good founders, also a lot of younger founders. And even prior to that, a lot of kind of coaching, consulting, just mentoring. And companies get to a certain point where they start to grow and they start to get some momentum, and they're like, oh, we need to bring in, we need to grow up a little bit, right? We need to bring some adults into the room. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, maybe. But the dilemma is that if somebody hasn't ever worked in a startup, they have no idea how big of a transition that is. Or if somebody's worked in a startup a while ago, but now they've been in roles where they've got teams of people doing everything for them. If they're too far detached from that, if they're 10 years out of that, I would take scrappy and less knowledgeable than knowledgeable and maybe a bit more sophisticated, but haven't had to be scrappy in a long time. Like that is a trait that I think you lose over the course of time if you're not exercising that all on a consistent basis. And so I always recommend, and you got to pay so much money for them. Like, is that really the right way to think about the cost structure for the business? Because all they're going to do is they're going to come in and they're going to say, now I need to hire 3 more people. So it's not just their cost. It's the cost of whoever they're going to bring in, that they're going to want to bring in with them, because they're not going to want to do all the work that has to be done, at least in certain phases. I mean, maybe you start getting, you get VC-backed companies that are, raising their Series D. I mean, okay, it's a little different. But, early bootstrapped, even Series A type companies, I think you're better off with scrappy and smart versus super seasoned and experienced.
So then this also kind of begs a question for me that I've heard this sort of floating around, but I don't actually understand anything about this. It's sort of like the fractional roles, like fractional CEO, COO, CRO. These are terms I think that get thrown around a lot. But I personally don't really there's so much that goes into that, and it's like, when is the right time to bring that on? What is the actual role? Like, what do they provide? So I think maybe if you could answer some of those questions, like start from the top, like what is, what does a fractional CEO actually do? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So good question. So I actually do fractional work. And so I'll have a lot of input onto this, but there's a difference between, at least in my world, fractional and consulting. Consulting is, here's some ideas, or advising, right? Here's ideas. Here's what we think you should do. And there's no accountability for them to actually execute on whether, and then and be graded on whether their idea was any good or not, right? So you can waste a lot of money doing that. Fractional is more, hey, I'm going to not only make recommendations and use my experience from what I've done in the past, but I'm going to actually get in your business and work on it. Like, so with the fractional roles that I have, I actually people reporting directly to me. But but a sales team of 5 isn't a full-time job for me. You know what I mean? It's just not. And so they get the value of having, and not just me, but a CFO too. You could have a smaller business. There could be a really good fractional CFO who, it's not a 40-hour job week for that size of business. They can do what they need to do in 10 hours a week and still give you more insight and more perspective and probably better guidance than somebody that you bring in who's going to be 40 hours a week but doesn't really know exactly what they're doing. Now, I think there's only certain roles that works in, and I think there's only periods of time, because if you really want to accelerate growth, at some point you kind of got to have everybody on board, fully dedicated, pushing really hard. But there's a period of time where you don't necessarily need that yet, but you still want the expertise that people who have done it in the past. But it's not so much work. It's because really you're looking for, like, what I do is I'm trying to help people avoid landmines. Like, I've seen this movie. This is how this is going to play out if you do this. I would strongly recommend not doing it this way. You probably want to divert and go over here. This will prevent you from having your foot blown off, which I've done in the past 3 different times and it doesn't feel good, and now you don't have to do that. So I think that I think that model typically works for a stage in time. I don't think it works well for VC-backed companies, because the expectation there is that we're going to put money in. We need you to 10 times our investment, which means you need to triple-digit percentage growth year over year for the next 5 years. And the energy required to do that is different than working in a profitable bootstrap business that's trying to go 30% year over year.
So I'm thinking about it as if, like, okay, so 2 different use cases. Let's say VC-backed company. They, maybe pre-seed or Series A.
Mm-hmm.
They've got like a core internal team, but obviously they're trying to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that that would be a good point? Because it's sort of like you have people who are dedicated and are somewhat knowledgeable,
Yep.
but maybe sort of require some external guidance because they're trying to better understand which direction to go in the industry based on initial customer feedback or like positioning.
Yep.
So do you think that would be solved better with maybe just like an external consultant, or is this something where
for a while
it would be better to have some, like, I think just for guidance and like,
for a period of time.
Okay.
For a period, especially VC back, because the VCs are like, their expectation is we're going to give you money and we want you to spend this money and we want you to spend it in the way that's going to get the most leverage and drive the most growth. And so they can typically afford to be able to bring, and not somebody who's been at corporate, remember, they can bring somebody in who either has been in startup environments, rapidly growing startup environments, and they're fine to stay like leadership roles, but they've been hands-on for a good period of time, and they're fine to continue to do that. If you can't find that person, then sure, fractional can step in for a period of time, but the expectations around the commitment to a business when it's VC backed it's a lot.
Like more in terms of time
For sure.
Okay.
And commitment. Like they will not recommend to founders that they build a team of advisors, which is different because it's fractional. You got people reporting to you, you're like in the business, like really working in it. You're having one-on-ones. You're analyzing the data. You're building models. They can do a lot of model building. Like, okay, what's the growth plan for next year? Well, what's the top of the funnel look like? And what's the conversion rate? You're like building out entire funnels for the business. That's a little different than just the advising. You want to have an advisory pool of people around that you can pull from when you need, but they will not recommend building a leadership team of fractional leaders to get them the outcome that they want.
Okay, this makes sense. So in the event that somebody were to decide to move forward with a fractional role, how should they be scrutinizing this? Like what kind of transformation and ROI should they be expecting from this kind of an experience?
Yeah, it's results. At least for me, it's results based end of story. Like the two companies that I'm like actively engaged with, not from an advisor standpoint, but literally from a fractional standpoint, is I've got revenue responsibility. Right? Like we built a model. I helped them with the model. Now I won't do all of it, but if we're not hitting the revenue milestones, like that's on me. And that's why consultants don't like to do fractional work, because you don't have to be held accountable for it. But typically fractional, if you're in a leadership role, you still have the same accountability. It may not be a full-time job because it's a smaller company, but you still have accountability to be able to produce the results. And then typically it's like, well, you're the expert, so how do you think we should produce the results? So like you might need to hire here, you might need to restructure here, might need to bring somebody in here. But it's very much results based. And if somebody's trying to do fractional work and they're not willing to commit to the results, then it's probably not the right person.
Yeah, 100%. So since you've worked with teams sort of across ops, marketing, etc., how do early stage founders then sort of like decide which area to bring in help first? Because like my mind, I think, would go to growth because I think that's the most immediate need. But I don't know if that's the right answer.
I don't know if there's a wrong answer, but I would say it's typically wherever they're weak. If they are more inclined to be customer facing, then do more of that.
I see.
If they're an engineer and a developer, as much as you still need to be able to, early on, the founders kind of got to lead the sales initiative, but at some point, somebody who's more customer facing can do that longer. And if you're a developer or you come out of the product arena or you come out of operations, you probably want to hand that off as soon as you can, not too early, because everybody wants to deal with the founder early on, But as soon as you have like some type of emotion, you probably want to hand that off. So I think it just depends on where you grew up, because you don't want to spend. What happens is, if you spend a lot of your time doing things that you don't like to do, nor are you very good at, it makes for very long days, and you really start to resent the business. You just do, because you're just spending time on. It doesn't matter your business or not. If you're spending all day doing stuff that you don't really like to do, that will wear on.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I've never been that way. Like, I've never been the kind of person that could do stuff that I was not interested in for very long. It's just much to the chagrin of my parents in school. Like, I just couldn't be bothered to be interested in things that I wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
And as a founder, it's interesting because your role changes, you know, so frequently, and you have to be willing to sort of roll with those punches and be okay with your role, your job description kind of changing. But I've always been sort of curious, and I am sure a lot of other people are too. Like, I know what the founder experience is like from the beginning. You're basically just doing all the things.
Yeah.
And then eventually, as you hire on more and more people, you start to sort of have less and less to do, it seems, but also at the same time, you're still somehow really, really busy. Like, I'm just kind of curious, like, what is that time filled with? Is it calls? Is it ideating? Is it bookkeeping? I don't know.
So if you're a rapidly growing business and you're starting to build out your leadership team, I think one thing that founders aren't necessarily always inclined to spend a lot of time doing, but very much should spend a lot of time doing, is recruiting. Have to spend and interviewing. And as much as I don't necessarily enjoy that process, like, how they handle that will very much determine what type of people are coming into the business. And there's nobody better to recruit than the founder. And I don't mean like sifting through resumes, but if you're growing, there's always roles open, and the person who attracts the best talent wins. They just do. And if you're leaving it up to the recruiters even the middle managers or your leadership team to make all the hires, and you're just detached from that, then you end up with a team of people and a culture that you do not want. I've never seen it happen differently. And so sometimes that requires a shift in a mindset. Like, sometimes I realize that late, like not too late, but later, like, wow, you look up and you're like, man, this is not like, what? Like, why? Like, who's here? And why is the culture the way that it is? This isn't what I really want for the culture. Like, well, you were really detached from the hiring process. So so I think that's one thing that happens. The other is, it depends on where you grow up. If you're inclined on product, then stay involved in the product. Like, if you're the product visionary, then you get to spend more time doing product things. If you're a developer or CTO by trade, then you're going to spend more time doing that. You spend more in theory, you'll spend more time doing what you're good, because that's where you're going to have the most impact to the business. That's where you can be the most valuable.
Yeah.
And then it's like, try not to just be back to back in meetings all day, because it creates no space to be able to think about what should we be doing. Like, I used to work with one of the founders, that was a CRO for a company that was an explosively growing company, and the founder was super young and super bright. I'm still a good friend with him today. And one of the things we would work on early on, or not even early on, like as the business was starting to grow, like, look, the leadership team and the people below you should be thinking, maybe month to month. People below that should be thinking maybe week to week, and then maybe below that day to day. You should be thinking 12 months out in front. And if you're not thinking about 12 months in front, nobody else is, and we're just going to end up drifting to wherever we drift to. Yeah. So you gotta spend time trying to figure out, what does this look like in 12 months? But if you're like back to back to back all day and just on calls and you're busy, and it's just like, next thing you know, you look up in 12 months, like, man, this is like, nothing's changed. This is all, or it's all changed and not in the way that I wanted it to. You just got to be real deliberate where you spend your time.
I think that's really interesting because I've noticed that as well. And it kind of ties back to what you said earlier about like you sometimes need adults in the room because you have all of these young people who are super bright and really good at their jobs, and they're super dedicated to the company, which is amazing. But at the same time, that also means that none of these people have managed before.
Right.
And there's inherent challenges there. And especially like, I think with the way that startups are, where it's just sort of this flexible, lack of hierarchy, very horizontal, which in theory is great. But like to your point, it's one of those situations where you will look up one day and be like, oh my God, how did we get here?
Yep.
And the culture isn't what we wanted. And that sucks because I think as founders, like that's half the reason why we make our own companies is because we've obviously not been enthralled by companies that we worked for previously, or like we have this big dream to set up a company in the way that only we can think of and want.
Yep.
And then to realize that somehow it got away from you, I think would just be like genuinely devastating. So, and I'm sure you've seen it time and time again, like what can founders do to prevent that?
Great question, by the way. And I'll tell you what it's not. I'll start with what it's not. It's not a ping pong table. It's not free snacks. It's not Uber Eats lunch. It's not unlimited PTO. It's not work at your leisure. It's none of that stuff. Like that's not, on the surface, it looks fun and you think that's what people want and they don't. What they want is they want to do something meaningful and they want to grow and they want to develop and they want to feel like they're contributing meaningfully to something that matters. And I don't mean matters, like you're saving the world. I just mean matters like we're all in this together and we're moving in a certain direction. And we're going to accomplish things, and accomplishing things is cool and it feels good. And I'll tell people, like, what's fun? Winning. It's fun. Winning's fun. And sometimes that can be intense, and it's not always easy. It's actually never easy. That's not true. There's a couple of companies recently that seemed like they got from like $0 to $100 million in AIR in like 6 months. And like, I don't understand like what's happening anymore, but it's a different conversation because that looks pretty easy. But my experience is it's never easy, but that's okay. If you're doing things that are hard, but you're getting better at it. And this is what I mean about hiring, but you gotta vet for that. You gotta find people that they don't want to just show up and collect a check. Like I tell people all the time, if you come into my business or you work with me or even a fractional working for me, that look, you're not going to retire here and you're not going to get a gold watch and you're not going to be 65 and none of us will. And we're all going to go do something next because that's just how the market works now. Right? Okay, great. We're all aligned around that. What I can tell you is that you will be my goal is to have you be twice as valuable as you are from the day you started working with me. And I have a very good track record, not everybody, but the people who really engage and I spend time with, whenever they go do what's next, they make twice as much money as they did when they came in the door whenever they were working for me initially. And that is what people care about. And it's not about the money. Yeah. They're just more valuable. So if you create an environment where you're actually helping people develop and evolve and grow and get better at what they do so they're more valuable, so they can take care of their obligations, they can take care of their family, they can go do whatever it is they want to do when they're outside of work and go and evolve their career, people will run through walls for you, even if it's really hard, even at times if you feel like I don't know how many people I've had cry in my office. Like it's intense. Like hyper growth is super intense. And it's okay. It's like, it's all right. I hear you. We'll work through it. But they don't quit, right? They're just like frustrated and it's hard. It's like, oh my God. But that's okay. We're going to get through this. We'll be able to do that. But if it's just like you're just pounding them all the time and they don't actually think you give a shit, or you're not really trying to help them invest in their career, then you're going to end up with a really crappy culture. Or you end up with, if you're too detached, then you're just going to. I've never said, I'm sorry to get like excited about this, but I think it's important. That I've never seen a company early on not take on the personality of the founder. So if the founder doesn't like the culture, they got to look in the mirror. because it always takes on. So if the founder's lax and relaxed and plays ping pong, wants to hang out, and then gets frustrated because nobody else is working, I'm like, well, dude, I don't know, what are you doing, right? And then if the founder's super intense and redlining all the time and always fairly agitated and pushing to the point where people are breaking, and then you wonder why you have so much turnover and people are quitting. Like, well, what did you expect? Because the managers then start doing that to their employees.
Yeah.
Right. And so the best thing I say is just be a really good example for the business. Act how you want everybody else to act, and everybody else will act like that.
Yeah. It's something that I think also requires active participation.
For sure.
You cannot be a leader in the office and not participate or not sort of establish yourself in that way. And it really is a top-down approach.
Yep.
I'm really glad that you said it's not about the free snacks, because I honestly, in my mind, I think that just makes people feel entitled. And then that behavior comes out, and then if you as a leader are not strong enough to set the tone, that's how things start to run away. And what I think makes a great leader is exactly what you said, which is you don't have to be the best B2B SaaS founder. You just have to care about your employees.
Yep.
And think about it from, how can I make the most performant teams? And then I think that sort of changes the whole perspective. And then now people are excited to come to work. They feel motivated. They are happy to be solving problems, even though the problems are hard and it's scary because you have these big lofty goals. But it makes it a little bit easier because you have a leader who you feel comfortable with.
Yep. Yes. And in defense of the founder, though, a lot of the young founders, they're trying to figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And they want to be, and they're still young. So you're influenced. Let's say you have a founder that's in their mid to late 20s. You're not that far out of college if you went to college. And you're not that far out of high school. And there's still a lot of I really care what people think about me. So I want people to like me. That is a recipe for disaster, because your team will ultimately like you, but not necessarily respect you. And then you're in a world of hurt, and it's hard to change that down the road.
100%.
Because likability is not a key characteristic to success. They don't want to be an asshole. I get that, but you want to be respected. But you got to earn that, right? But you got to respect yourself. You got to be confident in yourself. I mean, at some point in your career, you get to a point where you're I don't care. That's where I'm at. I don't care what people think about me. I genuinely don't. I really genuinely do not care. But I didn't start that way.
Of course.
And I think when you get to a point I just don't care what other people think about me, I'm going to do what I've told founders before. Look, your board may give you some direction, your team may give you some direction. Ultimately, you got to make the call, and you got to live with it, and you got to stop trying to placate to everybody. Stop trying to make everybody happy. And then you got to live with the results. And if you get great results, great. It's on you. And if you don't, and you get fired by your board, so what? At least you went out on your own terms, right? Trying to do it and stop trying to make everybody happy, because that never works.
I think your conscience can be clear when you've made a decision that you felt in the moment was the best possible decision. If that ends up not being the case, learning, but at least I think you can't hate yourself for making the call that you felt was the right call in the moment based on all the data around you, that, because anybody else in your position probably would have done the same thing.
Yep.
And I just recently finished this book called The Courage to be Disliked. And
cool. How was it?
It was really interesting. I think it was something that everybody should read. I did an audiobook just because it was easier.
Yep.
And it wasn't anything that was entirely net new, but the way that the book was written, it was very interesting. It's a dialogue between a philosopher and a student. And the student is arguing, I think, from the majority of people's perspectives, and then the philosophers sort of coming from the other perspective. And the big takeaway is like really a lot of the self-acceptance. You have to understand that the root of like all problems is because you're really worrying about like what other people think when that's really not your problem. And it's the same as what you said. It's not about being rude or dislikable. It's just about understanding that you need to be confident enough in yourself and comfortable with the fact that you cannot make everybody happy, and to spend your life trying to do so is a path to unhappiness, not to happiness.
I could not agree with that more. And I think it's very applicable outside of work as well.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was really helpful in general.
Yep. I mean,
highly recommend
it. That underlying philosophy, and to your point, not that you need to be aloof or distant or rude, but you just got to be comfortable with who you are and the decisions that you make, and be okay with and this is the hard part, is be okay with the consequences of that. That's what people are scared, especially in business. Like, well, it's scary. It's scary. And they say, and you hear this a lot. We're so busy. We have so much going on, and we have so many different initiatives. Like, well, that's only because you're scared to pick the two that you need to work on, because then you're on the hook. Right. Yeah. So if you got 15 things going on, you guys, there's so much going on and we're so busy, and I don't, there could be this reason or that reason, but then stop doing 15 things and pick two. And it's like, well, that's scary, because what if they're not the right two? Well, that's the job. So are they the right two? I don't know, but if you don't pick them, they'll be picked for you, and you probably won't like how that goes.
Yeah, I think it's just about how can you eliminate as much risk as possible within a decision. So like, small scale and low cost, and see how that drives impact, and then feed that if it works. It's like sourdough starter. You start with very little and you feed it and you nurture it and you hope that it bakes well. Sometimes it doesn't. And then sometimes it does. And you're like, okay, well, we'll just keep doing this recipe until that one fails. And then you try something new. And it's just sort of, like you said, I think depressurizing and accepting that there's inherent risk, and like understanding that you're going to make mistakes, and you just gotta do the best that you can do. That's really it.
Yeah. And I don't know how much AI is changing that right now, just in general, like how quickly it's like things are happening. Like, that's what I can't figure out yet. I don't know that anybody can, but all the things because things are happening so quickly, it's like, you may be, if you place the wrong bet and it slows you down for 2 months, you might be out of business. Like, where it used to be years, right? It's like you had time to kind of figure things out. I mean, obviously, if you're VC backed, you never feel like you have a lot of time, but you got some time. But now, I don't know, man. It's like the seeing what's happening, how quickly some of these things are happening, how big some of these companies are getting, how lean they are. I'm just like, that could be changing the fundamentals of how businesses have to operate when they start up. So I don't have an answer for that, but I loved your analogy, by the way. I think it's a great analogy. and then we'll see, like, do you have enough time to actually bake the bread anymore? I don't know.
Who knows?
I genuinely don't know. It's fascinating to watch it, but it's scary at the same time. Like, man, this is great. You're either on the right side of this or the wrong side of this, and I don't know how all that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, we won't know until later. I feel like a lot of people are likening it to like the .com boom, and I obviously wasn't there for that, but I imagine that when that occurred, people were like, "Holy shit! Like, this is going to change how companies start." Like, it opened up a whole new world. So I'm excited to see what happens. Maybe we'll have another episode in like 2 years, and we can maybe have a better answer by then. But cool. Well, thank you so much, Wade. This has been amazing and a really lovely conversation. I really appreciate your time and you hanging out with us for the last hour.
Thanks, Maddie. Also had a wonderful time. Maybe laughed a couple of times today, which is fantastic. Appreciate what you do. You're young, you got a bright future ahead of you. I appreciate the ambition and the being proactive and putting yourself out there. Like, talk about not caring, like not a bad one, like you care, but just being willing to do that. That's more than half the battle to get started, is just be willing to go out and do things, and you'll get the feedback. And then based on that feedback, it'll help you get more direction on what you should be doing. So kudos to you and good work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's really kind.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you got even one good idea, or agreed, or enjoyed the episode, or any combination thereof, smash that 5-star button. You can find all the links to connect with Wade in the show notes. And if you want more founder wisdom, community, and behind the scenes, come hang out at mimir.ink, join the newsletter, and I will see you guys next week.